This meets this. Can the Generation Z function in a modern-day consulting firm, or is it a match made in hell? Are consulting firms adjusting to the requirements of Gen Z, or is it still the work hard, play hard philosophy from the past 20 plus years?
How dare you!
We'll dive right into it, so let's go. Gen Z, for those who don't know, are people born between the mid to late 1990s and the early 2010s. In other words, the people who are just now entering the workforce. When you read the news or browse online, you often stumble across articles like these. The Gen Z wants great work-life balance, flexible working hours, remote work opportunities, meaningful work that makes a difference, and physical and mental well-being. Meeting these expectations is a great aspiration that we should all strive towards. The question is, how that fits to a modern-day working environment, especially in traditional high-pressure jobs like investment banking and consulting. Consulting is notorious for its high-pressure work environment, long hours and work directly at the client's site. So how does Gen Z fit into this picture, and how do consulting firms adjust to the requirements of Gen Z? Let's first look at the working model at consulting firms. Consulting firms have adjusted their working model a lot in recent years to better suit Gen Z. To be honest though, some of the changes were driven more by external shocks than by the requirements of Gen Z, especially the COVID-19 pandemic. During that time, a 100% remote working model was the norm, and while the pandemic is over, consulting firms have kept some of the changes. Gone are the days when you had to be at the client side Monday morning at 9 AM and leave with the last flight on Thursday evening. The models nowadays range from completely remote work with selective, let's say bi-weekly in-person meetings, to co-location with colleagues in a consulting firm office of their choice. So maybe 1 week in the New York City office and 1 week at home, and then a week in the Washington DC office, and maybe a couple of days at the client side in between. But the old model of course still persists if the client prefers to have consultants present on site. Overall, the ways of working and the geographic flexibility have changed a lot, even if the client has the last word on it. But now let's move on to work-life balance, and this is where it gets interesting. Working hours largely depend on industry, client, and topic of the project, but hours have definitely not decreased in recent years. If anything, the remote COVID model even increased hours in some cases. Previously, you had a natural cutoff point when heading to the airport on Thursday evening. When working from home, you just keep on going until late at night, even on a Thursday. In general, work-life balance is driven by client expectations. If you pay $150K per week, you want to see results, especially when hiring a top firm for a key strategic project. The consulting firm can't just say, well, most of our analysts are Gen Z, let's reduce the project scope a bit to enable a better work-life balance. No client would ever accept that, and if a consulting firm were to propose that, they'd not only lose the project, but they'd be laughed out of the meeting. Decision makers at corporates usually work long hours, and that is also what they expect from their advisors. So working hours haven't changed, and they won't change much in the future. What has changed is the expectations of fresh Gen Z consultants. In the old days, working hardcore was something you were proud of.
Shut up, pussy.
Doing an all-nighter was worn almost like a badge of honor. Gen Y, which we're part of, didn't glorify hard work, but we also didn't make a fuss about it. We simply did it. Efforts were made to improve work-life balance and well-being, but always with the understanding that this is a tough job and it will remain so. Gen Z now is the first that's really vocal about work-life balance. They explicitly and unapologetically demand it, and this is where cultures clash.
People are suffering. People are dying.
As we said before, the job will always be challenging and demand hard work, so you can't just drop the pencil at 8 PM. Project managers, and especially old school partners, are actually struggling with this attitude. They'd mostly say Gen Z isn't wrong, but they do need a bit of a reality check. This isn't a job at the ice cream parlor or at the government office. You're sparring literally with the chief executive. That guy probably puts in a lot of intensity and 100 hours a week, so you better keep up. If you want to be a pro athlete and you only want to train 1 hour a day while not maintaining a good diet, you won't be in the league for very long, and there's no one who will feel sorry for you. When it comes to meaningful work, consulting firms actually made a lot of progress in the recent past. Many consulting firms are doing a lot of pro bono work for charities and prioritizing topics around sustainability, increasing their competencies in that space. So there's definitely a lot of meaningful work at consulting firms. We've seen projects to increase vaccination rates in Africa, to helping reduce greenhouse gas emissions for companies across all industries. At the same time, a lot of the objectionable work has been discontinued in recent years. We all know about McKinsey's involvement in the opioid epidemic, so they don't advise anyone in that space anymore. The same is true for anything related to tobacco. There are now much higher guardrails and compliance procedures, and certain industries or certain clients are simply not served anymore. Besides all the classic project work, one thing that consulting firms do is that they offer a certain number of days per year to their consultants in which they can work on pro bono engagements or pursue a charitable activity. And we've seen a lot of people take advantage of that to help a charitable organization of their choice. But with all the talk around meaning, it's important to stress that a lot of the work in consulting is not exactly meaningful by Gen Z standards. Projects on operational efficiency, corporate transformations, growth strategies, etc. are at the center of clients' agendas. As a result, it's also the bread and butter of consulting firms. Just because sustainability is all the rage nowadays, it doesn't mean clients ignore their operations topics or strategic growth initiatives. In fact, it's a simple and unfortunate reality that clients typically won't push for something like sustainability unless they also expect a financial benefit from it, or at least unless they are forced to do something due to a regulatory requirement. So overall, meaningful work is definitely becoming more important. That being said, it's still more likely that you'll be helping a bank to cut costs than you'll be ending world hunger. After all, the work of consulting firms is driven by client needs and not by Gen Z demands. Finally, let's talk about mental and physical well-being. This is actually an area consulting firms are strongly focusing on. However, one can argue how well they're addressing the topic. You have weekly sessions on well-being, and the firms also often cover well-being expenses. That could be sports classes or extra computer screens to help with posture and the like. In addition, you'll have access to people to talk to or free coaching sessions to help you professionally and personally. But given that the work is still in a high-pressure environment with long hours, you usually don't have time to worry about your well-being during the week, as harsh as it sounds. Our personal experience is that Gen Z isn't any less resilient than previous generations. They are more vocal in their complaints, but it's not like we're seeing burnouts left and right now. More important than generational differences are simply external circumstances. Again, we're talking about COVID-19. The main problem was that people transitioned from school into the working world, and not just anywhere, but into a high-intensity job. The fact that many young consultants still live in a small apartment and simply alternate between their bed and their desk while not experiencing as much guidance and team spirit was tough on a lot of people. So in conclusion, consulting didn't really adjust much to the needs and demands of Gen Z. The main reason is that the consulting industry is simply driven by client demand, and as long as client executives are not Gen Z, there won't be much of a change. On the other hand, it's much more true that fresh Gen Z consultants, just like previous generations, need to adjust to the working world. Maybe it's social media that drives unrealistic expectations, but Gen Z consultants typically find themselves in a pretty rapid maturing process once they join consulting firms. All in all, we're not looking at the Gen Z revolution here, but we are looking at an evolution. While project work only slowly moves towards more meaningful and sustainability-oriented work, there is a push for personal well-being that's stronger than ever. And if Gen Z manages to reconcile that with the reality of top management strategy consulting, then hats off to them. We'll stay tuned. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe and activate the bell for more content like this. Let us know in the comments below if you have any questions or if there's a topic you'd like us to cover next. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.